2013 State Department press briefing on the Iran nuclear deal, our own one lucky guy, House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz, has sent a letter to Secretary of State John Kerry demanding that the State Department, quote, identify by name and job title the individual or individuals who were involved in the tampering. This as the agency says its investigation has hit a dead end. And now we're hearing from Secretary Kerry. He's calling the editing of the video, quote, stupid and clumsy and inappropriate, adding that he would like to find out exactly what happened and why. All right, Congressman, what is it that you are asking for here?
Well, look, they're trying to, I think they snookered the American people when Ben Rhodes and company tried to sell the Iranian deal. Now that it's in place, there seems to be a whitewashing of the record, because here you have this instance where there's 8 minutes of video that is extracted. Now they're admitting on purpose. At first they said it couldn't have been. Now they're saying it's on purpose. And now we find a second case where they have actually deleted a portion, a small portion, but a very important portion of the record in the transcript. And so it starts to look more like a pattern as opposed to just a one-off accident. And we expect the Secretary of State and the State Department to come clean and find out who they're held accountable.
Do you actually think you're going to get anything back?
Well, so today, later today, we're actually sending a request for the Secretary of State to appear before the Oversight Committee. They originally, we were trying to have Ben Rhodes come testify. They said that wasn't going to be a problem. Then less than 24 hours before, they claimed that there was a separation of branches problem that they had.
Executive privilege.
And so they didn't make him available. So now we want the Senate confirmed Secretary of State to come, and we'll, between now and July 15th, we expect him to come to the Oversight Committee and help explain all these problems.
With the Ben Rhodes thing, I was confused by that because he'd already talked to the media. But anyway, Secretary Kerry.
That's true. No, that's a really good point.
He talks to the media. He goes. He had a public. He had a that same day. He had a public speaking engagement where he answered questions.
I saw clips from it.
But would not appear before Congress.
Okay, can I ask you a quick question about this, because this is something that's been really troublesome, because you want a transparent administration, whether it's the State Department or the White House, and if that's what they're promising, that's certainly what they should deliver, at least the most basic threshold, and they're not. Do you think there's a direct connection between Ben Rhodes and the missing footage at the State Department?
I don't know, but I do know that they have actually taken transcript and pulled it out of the record. They edited out 8 minutes of video. That to me, it's just, it cannot stand. It's just absolutely inexcusable. And I think you're seeing the media far and wide now starting to understand how manipulative this administration has been to them, and they're letting them get away with it.
Julie, you're oddly silent on the matter.
I'm not silent. We talked about this on Friday, and I completely agree with everything you said. I mean, there's no excuse for this kind of behavior. I hate when they edit the congressional record. I hate when they edit any kind of public record. There's no excuse for editing public documents that we all pay for with our tax dollars, and I think John Kerry is right to demand answers. I hope he's sincere about that. I hope you get the answers that you require from your committee, because there really is no excuse for this kind of behavior. As a taxpayer, this should not be a partisan issue.
Yeah, and it's been all these convenient excuses. Well, someone picked up the phone and called an editor, and the editor just took it out. So therefore, you would have no digital record, no emails sent. I find that very hard to believe.
Last week, how many employees could you have to talk to?
There's 300 that they would have to interview one by one to get an answer. Why not do it?
Editors. So Kerry is calling this stupid and inappropriate. He says he's very angry about this. So you think you'll get him to come before you?
Well, if we mutually agree about this point, then let's go weed out the problem and find and hold people accountable. Almost nothing you can do in the government that actually gets you fired around here, but it seems like that should be one thing. That should be one of them.
That's a true statement. Iran is pushing back after the State Department put out its annual report listing Tehran as the top state sponsor of terror. A former ministry spokesperson calling the report fictitious and saying it demonstrates the State Department's lack of credibility. Meanwhile, legislation is working its way through Congress that could force the Obama administration to disclose whether it paid a ransom to secure the release of 10 American sailors and other U.S. citizens held by Iran earlier this year. $1.7 billion in taxpayer money was reportedly sent to the Islamic Republic just one day after they freed our Americans. What do you think happened there? You're overseeing cash. What happened?
This is why we want to have Secretary Kerry come before the committee. We want to know what sort of payment was made, if any, on freeing those hostages.
Has he agreed to do that?
We're just sending it to him today. In all fairness,
You
he
need to
hasn't
spend
had
some
time.
quality time with him.
We want to know what sort of payments were made to Iran in the Iranian deal. We've had the president say it's $150 billion. You've had the Treasury Secretary say it's $3 billion. It's somewhere in between, but we still don't know. We want to know what the Secretary of State is doing in Europe, trying to get banking arrangements made for Iran. There's a whole list of
You don't
questions
know?
and things. Well, I don't think the public knows. And that's why we wanted to have Ben Rhodes come before the committee. That's why we have to, I think, have the lead negotiator, as he calls himself, Secretary of State John Kerry, come and clarify this, because still to this day, we don't know the details of the Iranian deal. What are the side deals? Does anybody know what those are? No,
They've heard
nobody
me
knows
cry
what
about
they are.
that so much.
If you don't know what they are.
They think I need counseling. But you really have no idea?
I do know that you need counseling. I would agree with that. But I don't know the details. And nobody in Congress does. Nobody in the world knows except the Iranians and a few select people at the White House. They got to tell us. They got to come clean.
All right, so this ransom money and the idea that our guys are capitulated and they've got the guns drawn. They've made a statue out of our sailors over in Iran so people can see how great the Iranian government is, I suppose. What about that money, that $1.7 billion?
Don't know. And this is why the legislation is moving through the process to compel the administration to tell us whether or not that was tied. Was this a ransom payment? You know, the coincidence on the timing is just really mysterious.
And the explanation was very, very poor. It was vague and so unsatisfactory. And I think it's very fair to press the White House and figure out, where did this money come from? Why was it all of a sudden freed at this last minute? I mean, they really are horrible negotiators.
Julie?
Well, as I've said last week as well, I mean, the Iranians are one of the worst regimes on earth. You're absolutely right that we need to know exactly what was in that deal, a deal that I very, very, very reluctantly supported if it accomplishes the goal that the administration claims it's going to accomplish.
Do you regret it now?
I don't regret it because, again, I know my history too well. We talked about this the other day with the Soviets, and I understand that you negotiate with horrible regimes if you want to accomplish very, very narrow goals. I'm hopeful this will prevent them from going nuclear in the next decade, but we'll see. But
perhaps it wasn't narrow enough. Perhaps the goal, I mean, maybe that's the problem is, you know, there's so much we don't know that it actually broadens everything.
I would like to know, I'm with you. I would like to know what's going on. Listen, we're not going to change the Iranian regime's behavior. There's nothing we're going to do to make this regime suddenly join the democracy of nations and make them some amazing, you know, fellow among nations. I mean, they're one of the worst regimes, if not the worst regime on earth. They are absolutely out to get us. They're out to get Israel. They fund Hamas. They fund Hezbollah. They fund a bunch of terrorist organizations around the world. They're a horrible regime. To me, this deal was very limited in scope. The jury's still out as to whether it succeeded or not.
But they gave them $100 billion. The State Department's own admission, they're the leading state sponsor of terrorism, and they gave them $100 billion. You don't think that's going to come back and kill an awful lot of people across the world?
How much aid did we give the Soviets, even as they had nuclear weapons targeted at us, and basically had Nikita Khrushchev yelling at the UN that we will bury you with his shoe? I mean, we negotiate constantly with the worst regimes on earth. And listen, you may be right, I may be wrong, it remains to be seen, but you can't suddenly say that this regime is somebody that you expected in exchange for the money that we give them to not go nuclear to suddenly be this community of nations. That was never a realistic expectation.
It would be really telling if, on the heels of this deal, we had to pay them $1.7 billion to keep our sailors safe. I mean, that would say a whole lot. I hope you get to the bottom of it.
We're trying.
You're so busy. Recent polling shows Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump virtually tied in a general election race.